The worst part isn't the fear, it's the sense of being managed. My name is Tom, and for the last month I've been living in a house that is slowly, methodically being taken away from me. It's not a haunting. There are no ghosts, no slamming doors, no blood on the walls. It's much more clinical than that. It's a series of adjustments that suggest someone knows the rhythm of my life better than I do. I'm a 32-year-old actuary. My entire life is built on the assessment of risk and the maintenance of order. I live in a modest, semi-detached house in a quiet suburb. I don't have a dog, I don't have a partner, and I don't sleepwalk. I know this because, following a period of high stress 3 years ago, I participated in a clinical sleep study. The results were definitive. I am a log sleeper. Once I am out, I do not move until the alarm rings. The first incident happened on a Tuesday. I came home from the office at 6:15 p.m. and walked into the kitchen to make tea. I reached for my favorite mug, a chipped blue one I've had since university, which I always leave on the drying rack. It wasn't there. I found it in the cupboard, tucked behind the saucers. I paused. I live alone. I hadn't used that mug that morning. I'd used a travel thermos. I assumed I must have washed it and put it away the night before without thinking. I'm a creature of habit, and habits can become unconscious. I dismissed it. 2 days later, the smell appeared. I opened my front door and was hit by a sharp, antiseptic scent. It was the smell of a hospital corridor or a dentist's waiting room, heavy on the bleach and isopropyl alcohol. I checked the bathroom, thinking perhaps a cleaning bottle had leaked, but everything was sealed. The kitchen was spotless, yet the scent lingered in the hallway, a cold, chemical, invisible cloud. That night, I didn't sleep well. I kept thinking about the mug. I kept thinking about the smell. I finally drifted off around 2 a.m. When I woke up at 7 a.m., the first thing I noticed was my breathing. It was easy. Too easy. I usually suffer from seasonal allergies, but my nasal passages were perfectly clear. I sat up and reached for my glasses on the nightstand. They weren't there. I fumbled in the dark, my heart beginning a slow, heavy thud. I turned on the lamp. My glasses were sitting on the dresser across the room, placed neatly on top of a clean handkerchief. Next to them was a small plastic bottle of nasal spray I'd never seen before. The label was handwritten in a neat, slanted script. Tom, use twice daily. The dust in the vents is being handled. I didn't go to work that day. I spent 6 hours searching the house. I checked the attic, the crawl space, the back of every closet. I looked for signs of forced entry, but the window locks were untouched and the deadbolt was secure. I felt like a madman, pulling up floorboards and peeking behind the water heater. I found nothing. No one was hiding in the walls. No one was living in the basement. I decided to be smart. I went to a local electronics store and bought 3 high-definition, motion-activated cameras. I placed one in the kitchen, one in the hallway, and one in my bedroom, facing the bed. I linked them to an app on my phone that would alert me to any movement. For 3 nights, nothing happened. I watched hours of footage of myself sleeping, a motionless shape under the duvet. I felt a wave of relief. I told myself I was having some kind of prolonged stress reaction. I even started to laugh at the nasal spray incident, though I threw the bottle in the outside bin. On the fourth night, the camera in the hallway recorded something. I woke up at 4 a.m., not to a sound, but to a feeling of intense cold. I checked my phone. There was a notification. Movement detected in hallway at 3:22 a.m. My hands shook so hard, I almost dropped the phone. I opened the app and played the clip. The hallway was dark, illuminated only by the faint green light of the smoke detector. At 3:22 a.m., the door to the spare bedroom, which I always keep closed, slowly creaked open. A figure stepped out. It was a man. He was wearing a dark, professional-looking suit. He was tall, but he moved with a strange, fluid grace, his feet making absolutely no sound on the floorboards. He didn't look like a burglar. He didn't have a mask. He had a face that was so utterly average it was hard to focus on. Mid-40s, receding hairline, pale skin. He walked to my bedroom door and stopped. He didn't enter. Instead, he pulled a small notebook from his pocket and began to write. He stood there for exactly 2 minutes, checking his watch twice. Then he reached out and gently polished the brass doorknob with his sleeve. He turned toward the camera. He didn't look into the lens with malice. He looked like a foreman inspecting a job site. He nodded once, as if satisfied with the state of the hallway. And then he walked back into the spare bedroom and closed the door. I didn't scream. I couldn't. I was paralyzed by the sheer, mundane professionalism of his movements. I grabbed my phone and dialed the police. They arrived 10 minutes later. I met them on the front lawn, wrapped in a blanket, shivering despite the mild night. I showed them the footage. They went inside, guns drawn. They searched every inch of the spare bedroom. They found a bed with a bare mattress, an empty closet, and a dusty window. There was no one there. There were no hidden doors. More importantly, when they checked the camera's SD card in the hallway, the footage I had just seen was gone. "Mr. Miller," the older officer said, his voice dripping with that exhausted, midnight patience. "The app might have glitched, or you might have been dreaming. People see things when they're sleep-deprived." "I have the notification," I shouted, showing him my phone. "It says movement detected." "Cloud interference, maybe. Or a moth," he said. "Look, there's no one here. The house is secure. Go back to sleep." They left. I didn't go back to sleep. I sat in the kitchen with every light on, clutching a steak knife. As the sun began to rise, I noticed a small piece of paper tucked under the fruit bowl. It was a receipt, a printed professional receipt from a local HVAC company. It was dated for the previous afternoon. It said, "Air duct cleaning and sanitization completed." Note: found significant buildup of dander in the master bedroom. Recommended filtration upgrade. I called the company. They had no record of a visit to my address. That was yesterday. Today, I tried to leave. I packed a bag, intent on staying at a hotel. But when I went to the driveway, my car wouldn't start. I opened the hood and found that the spark plugs had been removed. They were sitting in a neat row on the engine block, each one cleaned and polished to a mirror shine. Next to them was a note. Tom, the tires are slightly underinflated. It's a safety risk in this weather. I've called a mobile mechanic for 2 p.m. Please be home to let him in. I didn't call a mechanic. I walked to the end of the driveway, intending to catch a bus. But as I reached the sidewalk, I saw a man standing across the street. He was wearing a high-visibility vest and holding a clipboard. He was looking at my house. He saw me and waved. It was a friendly, neighborly wave, but he didn't move. He just stood there, taking notes. I ran back inside and locked the door. I went to the kitchen to get a glass of water to calm my nerves. The glass was already sitting on the counter. It was filled with ice-cold water. Next to it was a small white pill. There was no note this time. But as I stood there, looking at the pill, I heard a sound from the floorboards beneath my feet. It wasn't a thump or a scrape. It was the muffled, rhythmic sound of a typewriter. Someone is beneath the house, filing a report on my heart rate. I'm sitting in the living room now. I've realized that the cameras were never for me. They were for him. He's using them to check his work. I just looked at my phone. The app is open. The kitchen camera is live. I can see myself sitting on the sofa, and I can see the man in the suit standing directly behind the sofa. He isn't moving. He's just looking at the back of my head, his hands folded neatly in front of him. He looks like he's waiting for me to finish my water. "Tom," he whispers. The audio on the camera is crystal clear. "You're slouching. It's bad for the spine. We really must maintain the structure." I haven't turned around yet. I'm too afraid that if I do, I'll see the clipboard, and I'll see that I've been marked for replacement.